The February air in Budapest was cold in 1882, but for Nikola Tesla, walking the city park with his friend Anatol Sigeti, the chill was irrelevant. For weeks, a problem had consumed him, a puzzle of magnets and motion, of currents and forces. He had been schooled in the dogma of direct current, the clumsy, lurching flow of electricity that was the pride of Thomas Edison and the limit of the age. But Tesla knew there was another way, a more elegant, more powerful way. Alternating current, a fluid, reversing flow, was the key, but no one had solved the riddle of how to make it practical, how to harness it to drive the world's machinery. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, Tesla recited poetry from memory, a passage from Goethe's Faust. The words filled the air, a performance for his friend, but his mind was a maelstrom of unseen forces. The glow retreats, done is the day of toil, it yonder hastes, new fields of life exploring, that no wing can lift me from the soil. As he spoke the final line, a vision erupted in his mind with the suddenness and clarity of a lightning strike. It was not a slow deduction, but a full-blown revelation, a complete mental blueprint. He saw a magnetic field, not static, but rotating. He saw a polyphase system, with currents out of step with one another, creating a whirling, invisible vortex of force. He saw a motor without a commutator, that complex, sparking, inefficient component that plagued direct current motors. In his mind's eye, a simple armature spun effortlessly, perfectly, driven by the rotating magnetic field induced by alternating current from a distant source. He stood frozen, a statue in the twilight. With a stick, he began drawing in the dirt, a diagram only he could understand. "See my motor here," he whispered, his voice thick with awe. "Watch me reverse the direction." In that moment, in a public park in Budapest, the modern world clicked into place. The 20th century, with its electrified cities, its global power grids, its endless hum of invisible energy, was born not in a crowded laboratory, but in the solitary, luminous theater of one man's mind. This was the power of the idea, pure and perfect. The struggle to materialize it, a struggle against rivals, against greed, against the inertia of human doubt, and against the very fabric of his own brilliant, tortured psyche, would be the story of his life. This is the story of the men who did not just invent devices, but who dreamed of a universally connected, powered planet, and who fought with every fiber of his being to give that dream to the world. The storm that broke over the small village of Smiljan in the Austrian Empire on a July night in 1856 was not merely a meteorological event, it was a portent. As thunder cannonaded across the Lika region and lightning tore the sky, a midwife fretted, declaring the tempest a bad omen for the child being born. But the mother, Nikola Tesla, a woman of immense practical strength and quiet intellect, is said to have replied, "No. He will be a child of light." Nikola Tesla entered the world amidst this elemental fury, the fourth of 5 children. His father, Milutin, was a Serbian Orthodox priest, a writer, and poet who possessed a formidable memory and held grand ambitions for his son to follow him into the clergy. But the true engineer in the household was Duka. Though without formal education, she could craft complex mechanical tools with an intuitive skill, designing her own looms and appliances, and memorizing vast volumes of Serbian poetry. From her, Nikola inherited his photographic memory, his capacity for intense visual thought, and the belief that invention was a form of creation. The landscape of his childhood was one of sharp contrasts, the serene, rolling hills and the violent, spectacular thunderstorms that he would come to adore. He was a boy of peculiar sensitivities and intense inner experiences. He saw blinding flashes of light that presaged mental images of people and places, a phenomenon that both terrified and gifted him. He performed complex integral calculus in his head, visualizing the equations and solutions with such clarity that his teachers accused him of cheating. This mind worked not with words, but with images, a living cinema of ideas. He developed obsessions, with the number 3, with cleanliness, with finishing whatever he started. He would walk exactly 3 times around the block, or calculate the cubic volume of his soup before he could eat, his mind a complex machine that required its own unique operating system. This unique consciousness was both his greatest gift and a source of profound isolation, setting him apart from his peers and grounding his genius in a reality that only he could fully perceive. His father's library was his sanctuary, a world of endless possibility. He devoured books, often finishing them in a single sitting, his memory retaining them perfectly. He dreamed of becoming an engineer, of harnessing the great forces of nature that so fascinated him. A crisis during a bout of cholera solidified this path. Weak and fearing his son would not survive, Milutin Tesla promised to send him to the best technical school in Europe if he recovered. It was the permission Nikola needed, the validation of his innermost desires. With renewed will, he fought off the illness, and his destiny was set. He would not serve the church, he would serve the future, becoming a priest not of God, but of energy. He left Smiljan for the higher real gymnasium in Karlovac, and later the prestigious Polytechnic school in Graz, his mind a supercharged vessel, ready to be filled with the knowledge that would fuel his great and waiting visions. The raw, native genius of the boy from Smiljan now entered the formal engineering crucible of Europe, and the collision would produce the sparks that would one day illuminate America. At the Polytechnic school in Graz, Tesla's mind found its element. He attended lectures on physics and advanced mathematics, absorbing the complex theories with an ease that astonished his professors. He worked from 3 in the morning until 11 at night, 7 days a week, a regimen that would have broken most other students. It was during a demonstration of a Gram dynamo, a direct current machine, that his destiny began to crystallize. The professor showed how the machine could operate as both a motor and a generator, but the commutator, a bundle of wire brushes that transferred current to the spinning armature, sparked and sputtered violently. Tesla observed that these sparks represented a massive waste of energy, a fundamental flaw in the design. He suggested to the professor that it might be possible to create a motor without a commutator. The professor, steeped in the established dogma, devoted an entire lecture to disproving the possibility, calling it a perpetual motion scheme, an impractical fantasy. The public dismissal stung Tesla deeply, but it also lit a fire of defiant determination. He knew, with a certainty that went beyond reason, that the professor was wrong. The idea of a perfect motor, a self-starting, efficient, brushless machine powered by alternating current, became an obsession. He turned the problem over and over in his mind, visualizing different configurations, testing them in the perfect laboratory of his imagination. For years, it remained an elusive phantom, a beautiful theory without a practical mechanism. After Graz, his journey took him to Prague and then to Budapest, where he took a position at the Central Telegraph Office. It was demanding work, but it was here that the final pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place. The intense concentration required for the job, coupled with the stress, pushed his peculiar mental faculties to their limit. He suffered a nervous breakdown, his senses becoming unbearably acute. He could hear the ticking of a watch 3 rooms away, the sound feeling like a blow to the brain. He could feel the vibrations of street traffic as painful tremors. He saw blinding flashes of light and experienced vivid hallucinations. It was a period of immense suffering, but also of immense creativity, a fever dream of the mind where the boundaries between reality and invention blurred. His doctors feared for his sanity, but Tesla understood it as a crisis of transformation. And then, during that fateful walk in the city park, as he recited poetry to calm his frayed nerves, the solution came to him not as a slow calculation, but as a divine vision. The rotating magnetic field, the polyphase system, it was all there, complete and perfect. The nervous afflictions that had plagued him vanished almost immediately, replaced by a surge of vitality and purpose. He had his great idea. Now he needed a world that was ready for it. He knew that world was not in Europe, but across the Atlantic, in the land of opportunity and industry, where a man named Thomas Edison was already building an electrical empire based on direct current. In 1884, with a few coins in his pocket and a head full of blueprints for machines that did not yet exist, Nikola Tesla set sail for America. He arrived in New York Harbor in 1884 with 4 cents in his pocket, a book of his own poetry, a letter of introduction, and a mind crackling with the plans for an electrical revolution. The letter was addressed to Thomas Alva Edison, the famous inventor and businessman, the Wizard of Menlo Park, whose direct current systems were already powering portions of New York City. The meeting between the two men was a clash of worlds, a confrontation between two fundamentally different kinds of genius. Edison was pragmatic, empirical, and ruthless. He worked by trial and error, famously declaring that genius was 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. His electrical system, direct current, was simple and worked on a small scale, but it had a fatal flaw. it could not be transmitted over long distances without immense and costly power losses. Tesla, by contrast, was a theoretician, a visionary who saw the entire system in his mind before a single wire was laid. He was elegant, formal, and spoke with the cadence of an old-world intellectual. He believed in the power of pure thought, of inspiration. When he met Edison, he described his vision for alternating current, explaining how it could solve the very distance problem that plagued Edison's DC empire. Edison, a staunch advocate of his own technology and a man deeply suspicious of theoretical, pie-in-the-sky ideas, was dismissive. He saw Tesla not as a fellow visionary, but as a talented but naive immigrant. He gave Tesla a job, but it was one of brute force labor, not of innovation. He put him to work improving the design of his DC dynamos, promising the princely sum of $50,000 if he could succeed. Tesla threw himself into the task, working day and night, and in a matter of months, he delivered a set of vastly improved designs that saved Edison a small fortune in operating costs. When Tesla asked for the promised $50,000, Edison merely laughed. He explained that the offer had been a joke, a manifestation of American humor that the Serbian immigrant had failed to understand. "You do not understand our American humor," Edison told him. Feeling betrayed and humiliated, Tesla immediately resigned. The break was total and permanent. It was not merely a personal falling out, it was the opening salvo in a technological war that would decide the future of electricity. This war of the currents would pit Edison's direct current against Tesla's alternating current, and it would be fought not just in laboratories and boardrooms, but in the court of public opinion, and it would be brutal. Now free from Edison, but penniless and alone in New York, Tesla faced a desperate winter. To survive, he was forced to take manual labor, digging ditches for the very Edison cable layers he had once designed machines for. His fellow ditch diggers knew nothing of the brilliant mind working beside them, a mind that held the blueprint for the next century. It was a period of profound hardship, but he never lost faith in his vision. He used the time to refine his polyphase system, mentally constructing and deconstructing every component. Then, fortune finally smiled. A former associate from the Edison Company, A.K. Brown of the Western Union Company, saw the potential in Tesla's ideas. Brown managed to secure funding for the Tesla Electric Company, and finally, Nikola Tesla had a laboratory and the resources to bring his visions to life. In a workshop on Liberty Street, he built the physical manifestations of the machines he had seen in his mind years before in Budapest. He constructed the first practical alternating current induction motor. He built generators, transformers, and a complete polyphase AC system. He filed patent after patent, a flood of intellectual property that laid the legal and technical foundation for a new electrical age. His demonstrations were breathtaking. He passed high-frequency alternating current through his own body to power light bulbs, holding the glowing glass tubes in his hands as if they were magical scepters, proving the safety and wonder of his system. The stage was now set for the great confrontation. On the other side of this technological divide stood George Westinghouse, a brilliant and formidable industrialist who had made his fortune with the railroad air brake. Westinghouse was also a believer in alternating current, having acquired the patents for an earlier AC system developed by Gollard and Gibbs. But he knew his system was incomplete, it lacked a reliable and efficient motor. When he heard of Tesla's revolutionary induction motor and his bundle of fundamental patents, he knew he had found the missing piece. In 1888, Westinghouse traveled to New York to meet Tesla. The meeting was the antithesis of the one with Edison. Westinghouse, a man of integrity and vision, immediately understood the magnitude of Tesla's achievement. He saw not just a motor, but a complete system that could power a nation. He made Tesla an offer, $60,000 in cash, plus a royalty of $2.50 per horsepower of electrical capacity sold for his polyphase patents. It was a staggering sum and a contract that promised to make Tesla one of the richest men in the world. Tesla, who had been digging ditches just years before, accepted without hesitation. The alliance between the visionary inventor and the pragmatic industrialist was forged. The war of the currents was now a true battle, with two powerful armies, Edison's General Electric and the Westinghouse Electric Company, led by Tesla's genius. Edison, realizing the existential threat that AC posed to his DC empire, launched a vicious and unscrupulous public relations campaign. He sought to brand alternating current as inherently deadly, dubbing it the executioner's current. He and his associates publicly electrocuted stray dogs, cats, and even an unfortunate circus elephant named Topsy using AC power, staging gruesome demonstrations to frighten the public and lawmakers. He even secretly funded the development of the first electric chair using Westinghouse AC generators, hoping to forever link his rival's technology with death in the public's mind. It was a dark chapter, a campaign of fear-mongering designed to stall progress and protect a financial empire. But the technical superiority of Tesla's system was undeniable. The defining moment, the turning point of the war, was the World's Columbian Exposition in Chicago in 1893. The fair's directors needed to choose an electrical system to illuminate the Great White City, a sprawling complex of neoclassical buildings that was to be a beacon of American progress. Westinghouse, armed with Tesla's patents, underbid General Electric by $500,000 and won the contract. It was Tesla's moment of ultimate vindication. He and Westinghouse designed and built the most extensive electrical installation the world had ever seen. They installed 12 1,000-horsepower AC generators, and when the switch was thrown on a May evening, the White City did not just light up, it erupted into a blaze of glory. 100,000 incandescent lamps and thousands of arc lights glimmered against the white stucco buildings, reflected in the lagoons, dazzling the millions of visitors. It was a spectacle of pure magic, a vision of a radiant future powered by alternating current. At the center of it all, in a special pavilion, stood Tesla's polyphase system, powering his induction motors and displaying the principles that made it all possible. The public saw not death and danger, but beauty, wonder, and limitless potential. The victory at the Chicago World's Fair was complete and decisive. It proved to the world that AC was not only safe but superior, capable of powering a modern civilization on a grand scale. The very next great project would be the ultimate proof, the final, unassailable argument for Tesla's system, the harnessing of one of nature's greatest wonders to power one of man's greatest cities. That wonder was Niagara Falls. For decades, visionaries had looked at the colossal power of the falls and dreamed of capturing it. But the question of how to transmit that power over the 26 miles to the city of Buffalo had stumped engineers. Direct current was impossible for the task. Only alternating current could do it. The International Niagara Falls Commission, after much deliberation, awarded the contract to Westinghouse, and by extension, to Tesla. It was the most ambitious electrical project ever conceived. Using Tesla's patents and designs, Westinghouse built the massive alternating current generators at the base of the falls. On a historic day in November, 1896, the switch was thrown, and for the first time, the power of Niagara Falls surged through Tesla's AC system, traveling along transmission lines to illuminate the streets and factories of Buffalo. It was a monumental achievement, a symbolic marriage of raw nature and human genius. The falls were no longer just a scenic wonder, they were a power source, and Tesla's system was the vessel that carried that power to the people. The success at Niagara silenced the last of Edison's and DC's supporters. The war was over. Tesla had won. Alternating current became the undisputed global standard, the backbone of the 20th century's electrical infrastructure. The system that powers your home, your city, and the device you are using to read this story is the direct descendant of the vision that came to Nikola Tesla in a Budapest park. He was at the pinnacle of his fame and influence, hailed as a hero, a genius who had truly powered the world. But for a mind like Tesla's, the conquest of the present was never the ultimate goal. Having solved the fundamental problem of power transmission, his gaze now turned to an even more radical and grander horizon, the wireless transmission of not just information, but of energy itself. The world had just been wired, and Tesla was already dreaming of cutting the cords. The triumph at Niagara Falls should have been the beginning of an era of unassailable prestige and limitless possibility for Nikola Tesla. He was a celebrated genius, his name synonymous with the very current that was modernizing the world. Yet, for a mind that thrived on the next frontier, the conquered territory of wired power was already becoming a cage. The same visionary impulse that had solved the puzzle of the rotating magnetic field now chafed against the mundane reality of its implementation. He had connected cities and nations with a web of copper, but his imagination was already leaping beyond wires, beyond even the earth itself. He began to speak of ideas that sounded less like engineering and more like alchemy, concepts that would lead him to the zenith of his ambition and the precipice of his ruin. His laboratory at 46 East Houston Street in New York became a theater of wonders, a place where the future seemed to be arriving ahead of schedule. Here, he pushed alternating current to its extremes, creating high-frequency currents that allowed for astonishing demonstrations. He held glowing vacuum tubes in his bare hands, lighting them with the electrical field that coursed through his body. He passed currents across the room without wires, illuminating lamps held by stunned visitors. He built one of the world's first radio-controlled boats, guiding it around a tank with a wireless transmitter, a magic trick that baffled onlookers who could not see the invisible Hertzian waves he was harnessing. The public and the press adored him, christening him the Wizard of the West, a title that fed his sense of destiny but also began to isolate him, framing his work as mysticism rather than serious science. It was in this laboratory that the grander vision took hold, a vision not of powering cities, but of connecting the entire planet. He conceived of a world system, a global network that would use the Earth itself as a conductor, transmitting not only information but vast amounts of electrical energy through the ground and the upper atmosphere, making every point on the globe a potential outlet for free, wireless power. To test the principles of this audacious plan, he needed space, immense amounts of power, and isolation. He found it in the thin, dry air of Colorado Springs, Colorado. In 1899, with funding from a wealthy patron, he built a bizarre and formidable laboratory on the empty plains. At its heart stood a monstrous apparatus, a magnifying transmitter designed to pump unimaginable amounts of electrical energy into the Earth. It was crowned by a wooden tower that reached 80 feet into the sky, topped by a 55-foot copper dome. The coil inside was so large and powerful that when activated, it could generate man-made lightning bolts over 100 feet long, accompanied by thunderclaps that could be heard 15 miles away. The citizens of Colorado Springs watched with a mixture of awe and terror as the night sky above Tesla's lab crackled with artificial storms. He became a local legend, a figure of mythic power conducting experiments that seemed to bend the laws of nature. It was here that he believed he made his most profound discovery, that the Earth itself was a resonant conductor, and that by sending precisely tuned electrical pulses into it, he could set the entire globe vibrating with electrical standing waves. He could, in theory, tap into this energy reservoir from anywhere on the planet. In his meticulous notes, he recorded receiving what he believed were intelligent signals from another world, a rhythmic pattern he interpreted as a message from Mars. While the scientific community dismissed this as fantasy or the misinterpretation of cosmic noise, for Tesla it was merely further proof that he was on the verge of unlocking the universe's fundamental communication network. He left Colorado Springs in early 1900, convinced he had proven the feasibility of his world system. He had the data, the vision, and the unshakable confidence. All he needed now was the capital to build it on a global scale. The opportunity seemed to arrive in the form of the world's most powerful banker, J. Pierpont Morgan. Tesla, with his impeccable manners and grand vision, managed to secure a meeting with the financier. He presented not a mere invention, but a new world order. He proposed a global network of towers that would transmit messages, telephony, and images instantly across the oceans, a system that would render all existing cables and telegraph lines obsolete. And woven into this proposal was his deeper, more radical dream of wireless power transmission. Morgan, a man who understood monopolies and profits, was captivated by the prospect of a worldwide communication monopoly. The grander vision of free energy likely seemed a fanciful footnote. In 1901, he granted Tesla $150,000, a colossal sum, to build a pilot plant for his world telegraphy system. With this backing, Tesla acquired land on Long Island Sound, at a place called Wardenclyffe. Here, he would build his masterpiece, the structure that would embody his life's work and his ultimate dream. The Wardenclyffe Tower was designed to be a cathedral of energy. It was to be a wooden lattice tower rising 187 feet into the air, crowned by a gigantic hemispherical dome. Beneath it, a brick laboratory building housed the powerful generators and the magnifying transmitter. Most importantly, the design called for a shaft to be driven 300 feet into the ground, with 16 iron pipes radiating outward, designed to grip the Earth and pump electrical vibrations into the planet's very crust. This was not just a tower, it was a stake meant to tap the planetary vein. For a time, construction proceeded at a feverish pace. Tesla was constantly on site, a whirlwind of energy and detail, overseeing every aspect of the build. He was living his vision, watching his Budapest revelation mature into a physical structure of immense scale and power. But almost immediately, problems arose. The scale of the project was far more ambitious than Morgan's initial investment could cover. Costs ballooned. Tesla, the eternal optimist and terrible businessman, had vastly underestimated the financial requirements. He wrote to Morgan repeatedly, asking for more funds, elaborating on his visions, trying to make the banker see the ultimate prize. But Morgan was growing impatient. He had invested in a practical telegraphy business, not a philanthropic quest to give free energy to the world. The final break came when Morgan likely learned the full scope of Tesla's wireless power ambitions, realizing it was a system that, if successful, would be impossible to meter and would therefore dismantle the very profit models that powered his industrial empire. He sent a terse refusal for further funding. The financial lifeline was cut. The collapse of Morgan's support was a catastrophic blow from which Tesla would never recover. Work at Wardenclyffe ground to a halt. The tower, a skeletal monument to a receding future, stood silent and incomplete against the Long Island sky. Tesla fought a desperate, years-long rearguard action to save his dream. He poured his own dwindling resources into the project. He borrowed money, he pleaded with other investors, but the shadow of Morgan's disapproval was a death sentence. The scientific community, once in awe of him, now began to view him as a deluded eccentric, a wizard who had lost his way. The Wardenclyffe Tower became a symbol not of progress, but of folly. In 1917, as the United States entered the First World War, the tower was deemed a potential hazard and landmark for German U-boats. It was dynamited and sold for scrap. The demolition was not just the destruction of a building, it was the physical annihilation of Tesla's grandest dream. He was not present to watch it fall. The sound of the explosion was the sound of his heart breaking, the final, brutal confirmation that the world was not yet ready for his vision. The fall of the tower marked the beginning of Tesla's long, slow fade from public prominence. The man who had once illuminated the White City and harnessed Niagara Falls now retreated into a world of increasing isolation and peculiarity. He moved into a series of rooms in the Hotel New Yorker, where he would live for the last decade of his life. The brilliant, dapper inventor who had charmed New York society became a reclusive, gaunt figure, known to the hotel staff for his strange habits and exacting demands. He was obsessed with the number 3, often walking around the block 3 times before entering the building. He developed a phobia of germs, demanding stacks of fresh linen and dozens of clean towels each day. He could not bear to shake hands or be in the presence of people wearing pearl jewelry, which he claimed caused him physical discomfort. His mind, once a perfectly tuned instrument of creation, was now a labyrinth of compulsions and fixations. Yet, even in this decline, the engine of his genius never fully stopped. He continued to file patents for new ideas, for a bladeless turbine, for a thought camera he believed could photograph mental images, and for a mysterious death ray, a particle beam weapon he hoped would end all war by making conflict too terrible to contemplate. He held press conferences on his birthday, where he would unveil these fantastic concepts to a press corps that now treated him as a charming anachronism, a living relic from a bygone age of invention. His statements grew more grandiose and detached from the practical world. He claimed he could split the Earth in two, like an apple. He spoke of communicating with other planets. The public still knew his name, but the context had shifted from respected genius to beloved, mad scientist. His most poignant relationship during these years was not with a person, but with a white pigeon. He developed a deep, spiritual connection to a specific bird that would visit his hotel window. He would spend a significant portion of his limited funds on special seed to feed her. He believed her eyes had an intense light, and he claimed to love her as a man loves a woman. When the pigeon finally died, Tesla said that a light went out of his life and that he knew his life's work was finished. It was a heartbreaking symbol of his profound loneliness, a man who could conceive of talking to Mars but found his deepest, most understanding connection with a creature that could not speak at all. He died alone in his hotel room on January 7, 1943, at the age of 86. His body was not discovered for 2 days. The coroner listed the cause of death as a coronary thrombosis. The man who had dreamed of powering the world had left it with little more than the unpaid hotel bill in his room. Yet, in the silence that followed his death, a strange thing began to happen. The ghost in the machine started to speak. The American government, in the midst of a world war, became immediately concerned about the contents of Tesla's papers. He had spoken of a death ray, and the FBI, fearing his ideas might have fallen into enemy hands or contained vital secrets, seized his entire estate. A special division of the Office of Alien Property Custodian, with the help of an MIT electrical engineer, spent days cataloging the mountains of documents, notebooks, and models from his storage. They found no immediate, operable superweapon, but they found something perhaps more valuable, the blueprints for a mind that was decades, and in some cases, a century ahead of its time. As the decades passed, historians and engineers began to sift through his legacy with fresh eyes. They saw that his fundamental patents for alternating current were not just important, they were the bedrock of the modern electrical grid. They realized that his work in Colorado Springs and at Wardenclyffe, while ultimately a failure in its primary goal, was a pioneering exploration of radio transmission, resonant circuits, and high-voltage engineering. The principles he demonstrated formed the basis for technologies that would only become commonplace long after his death: the radio, radar, remote control, and even the essential concepts of wireless communication that would lead to the cell phone and Wi-Fi. The man who had been semi-forgotten was slowly being rediscovered as a founding father of the electronic age. His cultural resurrection was even more dramatic. In the late 20th century, as the digital revolution took hold, a new generation of innovators and dreamers looked for a patron saint. They found him in Nikola Tesla. Here was a man who was not a corporate man, who was an immigrant, who thought in global, interconnected terms, and whose primary driving force was not profit, but a desire to improve the human condition. He was the ultimate outsider genius, a figure who stood against the Edisons and the Morgans of the world. His story, with its tragic arc of visionary triumph followed by cruel rejection, resonated deeply. His name began to appear in popular culture, in songs, in video games, in films. A cutting-edge electric car company was named after him. The unit of magnetic flux density, the Tesla, ensured his name would be spoken in laboratories and physics classrooms for as long as science endured. He became a cult figure, a symbol for everyone who has ever had a grand idea that was dismissed by the powers that be. So, what is the true legacy of the men who powered the world? It is a legacy woven from two distinct threads, one of concrete, monumental achievement, and the other of intangible, prophetic inspiration. The first thread is the very electricity that courses through our walls. Every time you flip a light switch, charge a device, or use an appliance, you are participating in a system that Nikola Tesla conceived and fought to establish. The AC power grid is his physical, enduring monument, a creation so vast and fundamental that it has become invisible, the very background hum of modern life. The second thread is the spirit of boundless, radical innovation. Tesla represents the power of the idea itself, the courage to envision a future that seems impossible to others, and the tragic, often necessary, struggle to bring that vision to a world that is not ready for it. He saw a planet woven together by invisible threads of energy and information, a vision we now call the Internet of Things, a global village powered by wireless connectivity. We live in the world he saw from a distance, a world he helped, in no small part, to build and to imagine. The current never dies. It may be interrupted, it may be shunted into strange and unexpected pathways, but the energy remains. Nikola Tesla poured the immense current of his genius into the world. Some of it was immediately captured and put to work, lighting our cities and driving our industry. The rest of it, the wild, untamed, visionary current, arced into the future, sparking across generations, waiting for the rest of us to build the receivers capable of understanding its power. He was a man out of time, a prophet of the electron, and his story endures as a powerful reminder that the future belongs not to those who perfect the present, but to those who dare to imagine a different world entirely. The story of Nikola Tesla does not end with his physical death, for the currents of his genius continued to circulate through the world, gathering strength and finding new conduits in the decades that followed. The immediate aftermath of his passing was one of quiet obscurity, a stark contrast to the luminous fame he had known in his youth. The grand funeral held for him at the Cathedral of St. John the Divine was attended by over 2,000 people, a testament to the lingering power of his name, yet the true magnitude of his contributions remained shrouded, a secret known only to a handful of scientists and historians. His body was cremated, and his ashes were eventually interred in a golden sphere at the Nikola Tesla Museum in Belgrade, a fittingly futuristic resting place for a man who always looked ahead. In the years following the Second World War, the world began to change in ways that seemed to follow the strange blueprints Tesla had left behind. The advent of the space age, with its need for wireless communication over vast distances, echoed his experiments in Colorado Springs. The development of radar, a technology that pulsed energy and listened for its return, was a direct descendant of the principles he had demonstrated with his resonant transformers. Even his dream of a global information network, a world system for the instant transmission of news and data, began to take form with the creation of the first computer networks and the nascent internet. Engineers and physicists, rediscovering his patents and published papers, often found with a shock that he had anticipated their own work by half a century. His method of using the Earth itself as a conductor, once ridiculed, found new relevance in studies of the ionosphere and extremely low-frequency communication used for contacting submerged submarines. The cultural reclamation of Tesla began in earnest in the latter part of the 20th century. He became a hero to the counterculture, a symbol of the individual fighting against vast, impersonal corporations. His name was invoked by environmentalists who saw in his vision of free, wireless energy a path away from the polluting fossil fuel industry. In the world of science fiction, he was the archetypal mad genius, the inspiration for countless characters whose brilliance transcended the understanding of their contemporaries. This popular revival was not merely about celebrating his past inventions, it was about embracing his ethos. Tesla represented a different kind of progress, one driven not by profit motive but by a pure, almost spiritual desire to elevate humanity. He was the antithesis of the closed, proprietary world of corporate research and development. He was a force of open, boundless imagination. This revival was solidified with the dawn of the digital age. The pioneers of Silicon Valley, men like Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak, saw in Tesla a kindred spirit, an inventor who combined technical prowess with a singular, almost obsessive design philosophy. The very concept of wireless, which became the mantra of the new millennium, from Wi-Fi to Bluetooth to cellular networks, was a concept Tesla had championed when wired telegraphy was the height of technology. When the electric car company Tesla Motors was founded, its founders chose the name not just to honor the men who made electric power practical, but to channel his spirit of audacious innovation. The car was not merely a vehicle, it was a statement, a piece of a larger ecosystem that included battery technology and a vision for sustainable energy, a modern echo of Tesla's own dream of a holistic, global power system. Yet, the full measure of the man must encompass his contradictions. To celebrate Tesla solely as a flawless hero is to diminish the profound tragedy of his story and the complexity of his mind. He was a genius who could not manage his own finances, a visionary who could not see the practical obstacles that would doom his grandest projects. His business naivety was staggering. He signed away the royalties that would have made him a billionaire because he believed in the mission of George Westinghouse, and he trusted the word of men like Thomas Edison and J.P. Morgan, only to be bitterly disappointed. His later years were marked by an increasing detachment from the scientific mainstream, as his brilliant mind ventured into territories that many considered pseudoscience or outright delusion. His claims of communicating with other planets and his designs for weapons that could end war were viewed as the ramblings of a man who had lost his grip on reality. But perhaps these very flaws are what make his story so enduringly human. He was not a cold, calculating machine of invention, he was a man of passion, of obsession, of profound sensitivity and deep loneliness. His eccentricities, his phobias, his love for a pigeon, all speak to a consciousness that experienced the world with an intensity that was both his gift and his curse. He saw the interconnectedness of all things, the vibrational harmony of the universe, and he spent his life trying to build the instruments that would allow the rest of us to hear that music. The fact that he sometimes heard melodies that others could not does not negate the symphony he helped compose. The world today is a testament to both his triumphant practicality and his unfulfilled prophecies. We live in the wired world he built, a planet girdled by his alternating current, but we are also moving inexorably toward the wireless world he imagined. Our smartphones, which connect us instantly to any point on the globe, are the pocket-sized realization of his world telegraphy system. The quest for renewable energy and the smart grid is a modern iteration of his dream of tapping the Earth's natural energies and distributing them efficiently. We are still catching up to him, still building the world he saw so clearly in his mind's eye over a century ago. So, the current never dies. It flows from the great generators at Niagara, through the copper wires he helped make viable, into the lights of our homes and the devices in our hands. And it also flows in the invisible networks that connect us, in the dreams of inventors and engineers who are inspired by his story, in the very idea that one person, armed with nothing but an idea and unwavering conviction, can change the world. Nikola Tesla was more than an inventor, he was a prophet of the modern age. He saw the potential of the electron to liberate humanity, to erase distances, and to bring light to the darkness. His life was a constant arc between the possible and the impossible, a brilliant, tragic, and ultimately triumphant demonstration that the future is not something that happens to us, but something we build, one idea, one spark, one revolution at a time. And in the quiet hum of the powered world around you, his voice, his vision, and his indomitable spirit echo still. The echoes of Tesla's life and work did not fade but rather amplified as the 20th century gave way to the 21st. The digital revolution, which transformed every aspect of human existence, found in Tesla a foundational spirit. The very architecture of the internet, a decentralized network for the free flow of information, is a philosophical cousin to his vision of a globally connected energy grid. While his Wardenclyffe Tower was destroyed, its conceptual blueprint was resurrected in the form of global satellite constellations and wireless data networks that now envelop the planet. Engineers developing resonant inductive coupling for charging electric vehicles and smartphones cite his early experiments as their intellectual forebear. The dream of wireless power, for which he was once ostracized, is now a multi-billion-dollar field of research and development, a quiet vindication playing out in laboratories and consumer electronics stores worldwide. His personal quirks, once dismissed as the mad ravings of a declining mind, are now re-evaluated through the modern lens of neuroscience and psychology. His photogenic memory, his ability to visualize complex machinery in 3 dimensions, his sensory sensitivities to sound and light, and his compulsive behaviors are now understood not merely as eccentricities but as potential manifestations of a unique neurodivergent mind. He serves as a powerful example of how cognitive differences can be a wellspring of extraordinary creativity, a man whose brain was wired in a way that allowed him to perceive realities invisible to others. This reassessment has made him an icon for those who think differently, a symbol that the path of genius often diverges sharply from the well-trodden road of conventional thought. The legal and scientific battles over his legacy also continued long after his death. The question of who truly invented radio, long credited to Guglielmo Marconi, was legally settled by the United States Supreme Court in 1943, shortly after Tesla's passing. The court, relying on prior art found in Tesla's patents, overturned key aspects of Marconi's claims, effectively recognizing Tesla as a fundamental inventor of the technology. It was a posthumous victory, a correction in the historical record that restored a critical piece of his intellectual territory. Similarly, his work on alternating current motors and the polyphase system became the foundation upon which the entire global electrical industry was built. Every turbine that spins in a hydroelectric dam, every generator in a power plant, and every motor in a factory hums with the physical manifestation of his Budapest vision. Yet, the more speculative aspects of his work continue to inspire and baffle in equal measure. His claims of having developed a peace ray or teleforce weapon led to decades of speculation and conspiracy theories, particularly during the Cold War. While his specific designs never came to fruition, the underlying principle of directed energy weapons became a major area of military research, culminating in modern laser and particle beam technologies. His notes on earthquake generation, or telegeodynamics, while never proven to be practical, explored the principles of mechanical resonance that engineers now carefully account for when designing skyscrapers and bridges to withstand seismic events. Even his most outlandish ideas contained a kernel of a physical principle that others would later explore with more rigorous scientific tools. In the realm of culture, his image has been polished into an almost mythic figure. He is the scientist as rock star, his likeness adorning t-shirts and posters, his name dropped in songs and video games. He is the hero of graphic novels and major motion pictures, often portrayed as the underdog genius wronged by the system. This pop culture apotheosis, while sometimes simplifying his complex story, has ensured that his name and his spirit of rebellion against the status quo are passed on to new generations. He has become less a historical figure and more an archetype, the eternal Prometheus who sought to bring the fire of knowledge and power to humanity, and who suffered for his generosity. The final, and perhaps most profound, lesson of Nikola Tesla's life lies in the relationship between vision and practicality. He was a man who saw the destination with unparalleled clarity but often struggled with the map to get there. His greatest strength was his boundless imagination, and his greatest weakness was his inability to navigate the mundane realities of finance and human fallibility. He dreamed of a world of abundance and connection, but he operated in a world of scarcity and competition. This tension is the core of his tragedy and the source of his enduring relevance. He forces us to ask difficult questions. How many world-changing ideas are lost because the visionaries who conceived them lack the means or the cunning to bring them to fruition? How often is true progress stifled because it threatens established economic interests? Today, as humanity stands at the precipice of new revolutions in energy, artificial intelligence, and space exploration, the spirit of Nikola Tesla is more vital than ever. He embodies the audacious hope that our problems are solvable, that the limits of today are not the limits of tomorrow. He represents the pure quest for knowledge, the drive to understand and harness the fundamental forces of the universe, not solely for profit, but for the betterment of all. The alternating current that powers our civilization is his tangible, living legacy. But his intangible legacy is the belief in the power of a single, unwavering idea. It is the belief that a man walking in a park, his mind ablaze with a vision of a rotating magnetic field, can, through sheer force of will and intellect, set the whole world spinning in a new and brighter direction. The current never dies. It merely transforms, waiting for the next mind ready to receive its charge and illuminate the darkness once more. The legacy of Nikola Tesla is not a static monument but a living current, one that continues to evolve and find new paths through the landscape of human endeavor. In the early 21st century, his influence has permeated realms far beyond electrical engineering, becoming a touchstone for philosophers, environmentalists, and even those exploring the outer limits of consciousness. His belief that the universe was a single, energetic whole, a symphony of vibrations, resonates deeply with modern quantum physics and holistic worldviews. The once esoteric notion that matter is fundamentally energy, and that everything is interconnected, was a truth Tesla perceived intuitively and sought to demonstrate through his machines. He was not merely building devices, he was constructing a physical philosophy, a testament to a unified field theory long before the term became commonplace in theoretical physics. This philosophical aspect of his work has inspired a new generation of thinkers who see in Tesla a bridge between the rigid materialism of the 19th century and the more fluid, interconnected understanding of reality emerging today. His experiments with resonance went beyond the mechanical and electrical. He was probing the very fabric of existence, exploring how a precise frequency could shatter a bridge or, conceptually, could harmonize with the energy of the planet itself. This idea, that subtle, applied forces can create massive, systemic change, has become a powerful metaphor in fields as diverse as organizational management, social dynamics, and healing arts. The Tesla coil, once a laboratory instrument for producing high-voltage electricity, has become a cultural icon representing the power of transformative energy, its brilliant, branching arcs a visual shorthand for breakthrough ideas and electrifying innovation. Furthermore, his lifelong struggle has become a poignant narrative in the ongoing debate about the ethics of innovation and the ownership of ideas. In an age dominated by patent wars and tightly controlled intellectual property, Tesla's story serves as a cautionary tale and a source of inspiration for the open-source movement. He ultimately valued the proliferation of his ideas over the accumulation of personal wealth, a principle that seems both noble and quixotic in today's economy. His name is invoked in arguments for a different model of progress, one where transformative technologies, particularly those related to energy, are developed for the public good rather than for corporate profit. The very concept of free energy, though still scientifically elusive, is inextricably linked to his name, symbolizing a yearning for liberation from resource scarcity and the geopolitical conflicts it fuels. Even his personal idiosyncrasies have been re-examined and given new meaning. In a society increasingly aware of neurodiversity, Tesla is often retrospectively analyzed as a potential exemplar of an autistic or highly sensitive mind. His intense focus, his sensory sensitivities, his need for routine, and his social difficulties are no longer seen simply as eccentricities but as integral aspects of a cognitive style that produced unique insights. This reframing has made him a relatable and empowering figure for individuals who themselves perceive the world differently, demonstrating that such differences can be a source of extraordinary strength and creativity, even if they come with profound personal challenges. The technological seeds he planted a century ago continue to sprout in unexpected ways. His work on beam weapons finds a distant echo in the precision of laser surgery and cutting tools. His visions of automated systems and remote control prefigured the robotics and drone industries. His fascination with the interface between machines and the human body hints at modern neuroprosthetics and brain-computer interfaces. It is as if he cast a wide net into the future, and we are still hauling in the catch, discovering with astonishment that he had already sketched the outlines of technologies we are only now learning to build. Ultimately, the story of Nikola Tesla is a story about the future itself. He was a man who lived in the future, and his tragedy was that the present was too slow to catch up with him. We now inhabit a world that is, in many ways, the one he imagined, a world connected by invisible waves, powered by currency championed, and driven by a pace of innovation he would have adored. Yet, his greater vision, that of a planet harmonized by abundant, freely available energy and elevated by technological benevolence, remains unfulfilled. This unfinished dream is his final and most powerful gift to us. It is a challenge and a responsibility. The humming power grid is his legacy, but the silent, waiting potential for a truly transformative future is his enduring question. He gave us the tools and the blueprint. It remains our task to find the wisdom and the will to build the world he could only see from a distance. The current never dies, it only awaits the next conductor. The philosophical underpinnings of Tesla's work represent perhaps the most profound and underappreciated aspect of his legacy. He was, at his core, not merely an engineer but a natural philosopher in the tradition of the ancients, a man who sought to understand the fundamental principles of the cosmos and then harness them for human benefit. His entire worldview was predicated on the concept of vibration and resonance. He saw the universe not as a collection of separate objects, but as a dynamic, interconnected web of energy, where everything from the spin of an electron to the orbit of a planet was a manifestation of rhythmic, oscillating forces. This was why he could move from designing a practical motor to attempting to transmit power through the Earth itself. To him, these were not separate endeavors, they were simply applications of the same universal principle on different scales. The rotating magnetic field in his motor was a microcosm of the larger energies he believed could be tapped and directed. This holistic vision was out of step with the reductionist science of his day, which preferred to break systems down into their component parts. Tesla always saw the system, the whole, the symphony. His lifelong battle was to make the rest of the world hear the music he so clearly perceived. This leads to a more nuanced understanding of his so-called failures. The collapse of the Wardenclyffe project is typically framed as a tragic defeat, the result of financial overreach and a grandiose vision outpacing practical reality. While this is true, it is also an incomplete picture. Wardenclyffe was not merely a failure, it was a premature experiment in global systems engineering. The challenges Tesla faced, securing massive funding, managing a project of unprecedented technological complexity, navigating the political and economic implications of a world-changing technology, are the very same challenges that confront endeavors like the Large Hadron Collider, the International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, or the development of a global quantum internet today. Tesla was a pioneer not only in electrical engineering but also in the realm of big science, and his struggles illuminate the immense difficulties of translating a transcendent individual vision into a collective, societal achievement. He lacked the institutional framework, the collaborative networks, and the project management methodologies that modern megaprojects rely upon. He was a lone composer trying to conduct a planetary orchestra, and the musicians were not yet ready to play his score. His relationship with the spiritual and the unseen further complicates his legacy and makes him a fascinating figure at the intersection of science and mysticism. Tesla was a man of science, fiercely rational in his methods, yet he spoke of his inventions as if they were revealed to him, and he attributed his creative process to a higher power or a universal source of knowledge. He did not see a contradiction between rigorous experimentation and a belief in a cosmic order accessible to the human mind. This has made him a pivotal figure for those who seek to bridge the perceived gap between science and spirituality. He demonstrated that a sense of wonder and a belief in the interconnectedness of all things could be powerful drivers of scientific discovery, not impediments to it. In an age where scientific specialization often leads to a fragmented worldview, Tesla stands as a reminder of the Renaissance ideal, where the pursuit of knowledge was a unified quest to understand humanity's place in a vast, mysterious, and beautifully ordered universe. The economic model Tesla embodied, or rather, failed to embody, presents a radical alternative to our current paradigms. His disastrous decision to tear up his royalty contract with Westinghouse, an act of generosity that cost him hundreds of millions of dollars, is often cited as proof of his business incompetence. But viewed through another lens, it was a profound ideological statement. He believed that his alternating current system was too important for the future of humanity to be burdened by excessive royalties that might slow its adoption. He prioritized the proliferation of his idea over his personal enrichment. In today's world, where intellectual property is fiercely guarded and monetized, where access to life-saving medicines and green technologies can be restricted by patents and profit margins, Tesla's stance seems not just naive, but revolutionary. He represents a path not taken, a model of innovation driven by altruism and a commitment to the public good. His life forces us to ask uncomfortable questions. What world-changing technologies are languishing today because they are not deemed profitable enough? What is the true cost of commodifying knowledge that could alleviate human suffering or solve environmental crises? Tesla is the ghost at the feast of modern capitalism, a silent challenge to our core assumptions about value, incentive, and progress. On a more personal and psychological level, Tesla's life is a deep and enduring study of the price of genius. His immense mental capacities, his eidetic memory, his ability to visualize and test machines in his mind, his capacity for hyperconcentration, came at a cost. His sensory sensitivities, his obsessive-compulsive rituals, his insomnia, and his profound loneliness were the shadows cast by his brilliant light. He was a man who could conceive of illuminating the entire planet, yet he often ate his meals alone in the silence of his hotel room, finding solace only in the company of pigeons. This dichotomy makes him a deeply human and tragically relatable figure. He embodies the universal tension between the pursuit of a grand, external destiny and the yearning for simple, internal peace. He achieved immortality through his work, but he often seemed to sacrifice the ordinary joys of life along the way. His story is a poignant reminder that greatness is rarely a gift without a burden, and that the minds that push humanity forward often do so from a place of profound personal isolation. Finally, the very mythology that has grown around Tesla is a cultural phenomenon worthy of examination. The forgotten genius narrative, while containing truth, has been amplified and shaped to serve contemporary needs. He has been adopted as an icon by libertarians who see in him a victim of state and corporate power, by Silicon Valley technologists who view him as the archetypal disruptive innovator, and by fringe theorists who project their own beliefs onto his more speculative claims. This process of myth-making reveals less about Tesla himself and more about our own cultural moment. We see in him what we need to see, a champion for our causes, a martyr for our grievances, a symbol of our hopes for the future. He has become a blank screen upon which we project our anxieties about technology, our distrust of authority, and our dreams of a better world. In the final analysis, to continue the story of Nikola Tesla is to continue a conversation about the future of humanity itself. The alternating current system he gifted to the world was just the beginning, the foundational layer upon which the digital age was built. But his greater vision, a world united by wireless energy, a civilization living in harmony with the planet's natural forces, a humanity elevated by technologies that are both powerful and benevolent, remains the great unfinished work. We have mastered the wires, but we are still struggling to grasp the wireless, holistic, and ethical dimensions of his dream. The energy crisis, the digital divide, the geopolitical struggles over resources, these are all problems that a fully realized Tesla-esque vision might have rendered obsolete. The question he bequeaths to us is not simply how to build better machines, but how to build a better world with the machines we create. The current he set in motion over a century ago continues to flow, waiting for us to become worthy conductors, to finally build the resonant, interconnected, and enlightened global civilization that he saw so clearly in his magnificent, tormented, and forever forward-looking mind. The work is not done. The experiment continues. To understand Tesla fully, one must first appreciate the sheer, unadulterated power of his cognitive processes. He was not a man who calculated, he was a man who saw. His mind was a perfect, three-dimensional theater where the laws of physics were not abstract equations but tangible, visual realities. When he conceived of the alternating current induction motor, he did not draft it on paper. He constructed it in the space behind his eyes, watching its components assemble, testing its operation over months of mental simulation. He could run these models for weeks until every potential flaw was identified and resolved, and only then would he commit the design to physical form, often finding that the built machine operated with near-perfect fidelity to the vision he had nurtured in his mind. This preternatural ability was both his supreme advantage and a source of immense isolation. How could he explain the intricate dance of magnetic fields he witnessed in his head to men who thought in ledgers and linear logic? His thought process was symphonic, while the world demanded simple, straightforward melodies. This fundamental disconnect between the way he experienced reality and the way his contemporaries did is the core thread running through his entire life, explaining his triumphs as well as his profound estrangement. His early life in Smiljan and Gospic was not merely a prologue but the crucible in which this unique consciousness was forged. The rural setting, steeped in the natural world and the superstitions of his Serbian heritage, provided a stark contrast to the rigorous, formal education he would later pursue. From his mother, Duka, he inherited not just a knack for invention, but a deep, almost mystical connection to the process of creation itself. Her ability to design and build complex tools without formal training was a living lesson in intuitive engineering, a demonstration that profound understanding could exist outside of academic institutions. His father's world of words, scripture, and intellectual debate provided the mental discipline to structure his burgeoning ideas. The traumatic loss of his older brother, Dane, a boy of immense intellectual promise, cast a long shadow over his family and undoubtedly over the young Nikola. It instilled in him a desperate, driving need to fulfill not only his own potential but also that of the brother who was lost, burdening him with a sense of destiny that was both a motivator and a terrible weight. His education at the Polytechnic School in Graz and later in Prague was a period of intense intellectual fermentation. It was here that the conflict between established dogma and his own burgeoning insights first erupted. The Graham dynamo, with its sparking, inefficient commutator, became a symbol of everything that was wrong with the electrical engineering of his day. His professor's public dismissal of the possibility of a commutator-less motor was not just a minor academic humiliation, it was a direct challenge to the very way Tesla perceived the physical world. It created in him a righteous fury, a determination to prove that his vision was not fantasy but a superior form of truth. This period also saw the first alarming manifestations of his sensory sensitivities. The roaring of the dynamos was not just noise to him, it was a physical assault, a vibration that shook him to his core. These were not affectations but genuine physiological experiences, the first signs of a nervous system wired to a different frequency, one that could perceive the subtle energies of machines but was also vulnerable to their crude, mechanical clamor. The breakdown he suffered in Budapest, followed by the moment of sublime revelation in the city park, represents the classic archetype of the shaman's journey, a period of intense suffering and disintegration of the self, followed by a rebirth and the reception of a transformative vision. His senses, pushed to their breaking point, did not shatter but instead reconfigured themselves, allowing the solution to the rotating magnetic field to emerge not as a laborious calculation, but as a complete, prepackaged epiphany. It was as if his mind had to be stripped of its conventional defenses for this higher-order concept to download into his consciousness. This pattern would repeat itself throughout his life. His greatest leaps of intuition often came at moments of extreme personal duress or isolation, as if his genius required the quiet that only crisis could provide. His arrival in America and the subsequent conflict with Thomas Edison is often framed as a simple battle between good and evil, the visionary versus the robber baron. While the moral dimensions are clear, the technological and philosophical schism was even deeper. Edison's direct current system was a reflection of his own worldview, simple, brute force, and local. It was a technology of empire building, suitable for powering a discrete section of a city and charging customers a premium for the service. It was electricity as a commodity. Tesla's alternating current, by contrast, was a technology of interconnection and democratization. Its ability to be transformed to high voltages for efficient long-distance transmission meant it could, in theory, bring power to the most remote farmhouse and the densest urban center alike. It was a systemic, holistic approach, a network in its very essence. The war of the currents was therefore a battle for the soul of the modern world. Would it be a patchwork of isolated, privately controlled fiefdoms, or a universally connected, interdependent whole? Tesla's victory, sealed at the Chicago World's Fair in Niagara Falls, was a victory for the latter vision. He had not just won a technical argument, he had established the foundational architecture for the networked planet we inhabit today. The period following this victory is the most psychologically complex phase of his life. Having achieved everything he had set out to do, having proven his detractors wrong and revolutionized global industry, he found himself adrift. For a mind like his, the conquest of a frontier merely revealed the next, more distant one. The wired world was now a solved problem, a mundane reality. His imagination, forever leaping ahead, was already captivated by the invisible world of electromagnetic waves. His experiments at his Houston Street laboratory were not merely research and development, they were a form of public wizardry, a series of spectacular demonstrations designed to prepare the public consciousness for the next great leap. When he lit lamps without wires or controlled a boat by radio, he was not just showing off new gadgets, he was performing a new reality, teaching people to believe in the invisible. He was a prophet staging his own miracles to build faith in a coming kingdom. Colorado Springs was the logical, extreme extension of this quest. It was here that the scale of his ambition became truly planetary. The massive magnifying transmitter was not just a larger version of his earlier coils, it was an instrument for playing the Earth itself. By pumping immense electrical pulses into the ground, he was attempting to find the planet's resonant frequency, to make the globe ring like a bell with electrical energy. His claim to have received signals from another world, while almost certainly a misinterpretation of natural phenomena like the plasma emissions from the ionosphere now known as whistlers, is deeply revealing. It shows that his mind, having conceived of a connected Earth, naturally extrapolated to a connected cosmos. If the Earth could be a conductor in a circuit, why not the solar system? Why not the galaxy? His vision was expanding at an exponential rate, outpacing not only the technology of his time but the very conceptual framework of science. The Wardenclyffe Tower was the tragic, magnificent apex of this expansion. It was to be the first node in his world system, the first cathedral in a global religion of energy. The partnership with J.P. Morgan was a Faustian bargain from the start. Tesla, the idealist, believed he was enlisting a patron for a project that would benefit all humanity. Morgan, the arch-capitalist, saw potential for a total monopoly on global communications. The fatal rupture occurred when Morgan realized that Tesla's ultimate goal was not just wireless information, but wireless power. A telegraphy monopoly could be metered and sold. Free energy for everyone was anathema to the very concept of a for-profit utility. The withdrawal of Morgan's support was more than a financial setback. It was a philosophical veto from the powers that governed the world. It was the system declaring that Tesla's vision was too disruptive, too revolutionary, too pure for the compromised reality of human commerce. The decades that followed Wardenclyffe's collapse are often painted as a simple story of decline, but this is a superficial reading. While it is true that he never again commanded the same level of financial or scientific influence, his mind remained a formidable engine of creation. His ideas simply became too large, too fundamental, to be contained within the framework of practical invention. His work on bladeless turbines, for instance, was an attempt to revolutionize mechanical energy conversion, moving beyond the clumsy pistons and blades of the steam age. His concepts for vertical takeoff aircraft, his theories on the use of the ionosphere for energy projection, his ruminations on cosmic rays and the nature of the ether, these were the thoughts of a man who had graduated from solving earthly problems to pondering cosmic ones. His notorious death ray, or teleforce weapon, was not the raving of a madman but a primitive conception of a charged particle beam weapon, a technology that would become a major area of research for the Strategic Defense Initiative decades later. He was thinking in terms of force fields and directed energy while the world was still perfecting the vacuum tube. His personal life in the Hotel New Yorker is a rich study in the psychology of a genius in isolation. His obsessive-compulsive rituals, the precise arrangement of his meal, the meticulous calculation of his steps, the fixation on the number 3, were not mere quirks. They were the control mechanisms of a mind that had been overwhelmed by the chaotic, unfiltered input of the world. By imposing a rigid, numerical order on his immediate environment, he could create a small island of predictability in the vast, turbulent ocean of his perceptions. His relationship with the white pigeon was perhaps the most poignant relationship of his life. In this creature, he found a purity of connection that was impossible with humans. He saw in its eyes an understanding, a light, that transcended language. It was a symbolic union, the man who sought to harness the forces of the air finding his deepest solace in a creature of the air. His death in 1943 was as solitary as his later life, but the aftermath ignited a new chapter in his story. The immediate seizure of his papers by the Office of Alien Property Custodian, driven by fears that his death ray notes might fall into enemy hands, speaks to the latent power still attributed to his ideas, even in his absence. The subsequent analysis by John G. Trump, an MIT engineer and uncle of the future president, who concluded that Tesla's later ideas were speculative, philosophical, and somewhat promotional, was a definitive judgment from the new, institutionalized world of science. It was the verdict of the establishment on the lone wolf. Yet, this very act of seizure and classification ensured the preservation of his vast archives, creating a treasure trove for future generations to rediscover. The posthumous reclamation of Tesla's legacy is a fascinating process of cultural revisionism. It began in the 1950s and 60s with the Yugosl. To truly grasp the magnitude of Tesla's intellectual universe, we must venture beyond the well-trodden paths of his major inventions and into the labyrinth of his lesser-known speculations, for it is here that the boundless nature of his imagination becomes most apparent. In the quiet solitude of his later years, his mind, unmoored from the demands of practical investors and the constraints of immediate commercialization, embarked on journeys into realms that modern science is only beginning to map. He conceived of a thought camera, a device he believed could directly photograph mental images onto a prepared plate. He theorized that a thought, being a tangible process in the brain involving electrical and chemical changes, must emit a specific, albeit faint, radiation. If this radiation could be focused and recorded, the inner landscape of the mind, its memories, its dreams, its inventions, could be made visible. While this remains far beyond our current neuroscience, it prefigures modern research into brain-computer interfaces and neuroimaging techniques like fMRI, which indeed attempt to translate the brain's activity into visual data. Tesla was, in essence, dreaming of a technology that could breach the final frontier of subjectivity itself. His work on what he called telegeodynamics was equally staggering. He proposed that by understanding the precise resonant frequencies of the Earth's crust, one could generate mechanical vibrations that could be transmitted through the planet to specific locations. With a small, precisely tuned oscillator, he claimed he could, in theory, find mineral deposits, or even, in his most controversial assertion, split the planet in two. While the latter is a hyperbolic and physically improbable claim, the underlying principle is sound. Engineers today must carefully calculate the resonant frequencies of structures to prevent catastrophic failure, as demonstrated by the infamous collapse of the Tacoma Narrows Bridge. Furthermore, technologies like seismic surveying use controlled vibrations to map subterranean geology for oil and gas exploration, a direct, practical application of the principles Tesla was exploring. He also delved into the nature of light and matter itself. He was deeply skeptical of the emerging theories of relativity, holding fast to his belief in a luminiferous ether, a medium through which electromagnetic waves propagated. While modern physics has largely discarded the concept of the ether, Tesla's intuition that empty space is not nothing but a plenum of potential energy finds a curious parallel in quantum field theory and the concept of the quantum vacuum, a seething sea of virtual particles and zero-point energy. His rejection of Einstein's work was not merely the stubbornness of an aging mind, it was the resistance of a man whose entire worldview was built on a mechanical, classical understanding of the universe, one where forces required a medium. His failure to embrace the new physics isolated him further from the scientific mainstream, but it also preserved a unique and potent line of philosophical inquiry rooted in a tangible, connected cosmos. Beyond the physical sciences, Tesla's influence seeped into the arts and humanities. His life story became a modern epic, a tragic drama fit for the stage and screen. Playwrights and filmmakers were drawn to the inherent conflict in his narrative, the Promethean figure who steals fire from the gods for humanity, only to be punished by the very systems he sought to elevate. He is the archetype of the unrecognized genius, a trope that resonates deeply in a culture often skeptical of authority and celebratory of the underdog. Composers have written symphonies attempting to capture the hum of his currents and the dramatic arcs of his coils. Visual artists have used his image and the iconography of his inventions to comment on technology, alienation, and the sublime power of electricity. In the realm of literature, he inspired characters from the heroic to the villainous. He is the obvious model for the visionary inventor in Thomas Pynchon's complex histories, and the tragic figure behind the mad scientist in various Gothic and science fiction tales. His presence in popular culture is a barometer of our collective anxiety and awe regarding technology. When we imagine a lone inventor in a laboratory, creating world-changing devices, we are picturing Tesla. When we fear that a powerful new technology will be co-opted by sinister forces, we are recounting the story of Wardenclyffe. The ethical dimensions of his work continue to provoke intense debate. Tesla was a man of profound contradictions. He created the foundation for the military-industrial complex with his work on remote-controlled vehicles and potential energy weapons, yet he was a passionate, if eccentric, pacifist who believed his Teleforce weapon would end all war by making it unthinkable. He dreamed of free energy for all, yet his systems became the bedrock of a vast, profitable utility industry. This dichotomy forces us to confront the problem of dual-use technology. Any powerful innovation can be a tool for liberation or oppression, for creation or destruction. Tesla embodied this dilemma. He was an idealist who unleashed forces he could not control, a man who wanted to empower the individual but whose inventions ultimately empowered large corporations and governments. His legacy is a permanent cautionary tale about the separation of intent from consequence in the realm of technological discovery. On a personal, psychological level, modern analysis of Tesla's meticulously documented habits and self-described experiences offers a fascinating window into a potentially neurodivergent mind. His extreme sensitivity to sound and light, his obsessive-compulsive rituals, his requirement for 18 clean towels, his aversion to round objects and human hair, his compulsion to calculate the cubic volume of his food, his intense, narrow foci, and his significant social difficulties are all characteristics now commonly associated with autism spectrum disorder. Viewing Tesla through this lens does not diminish his genius, rather, it reframes it. It suggests that his extraordinary abilities, his capacity for hyperconcentration, his visual spatial thinking, his systems-level analysis, were inextricably linked to his neurological makeup. He was not a normal man who happened to be brilliant. His brilliance was a product of the unique way his brain was wired. This understanding makes him an even more powerful figure, a beacon for those whose minds operate differently, demonstrating that such differences are not deficits but can be the source of world-transforming creativity. The very manner of his communication also reveals a mind of a different order. His lectures were not dry recitations of data, they were performative, almost mystical experiences. He spoke of electricity not as a mere physical phenomenon, but as a living being, guided by an intelligence. He used poetic, metaphysical language to describe his engineering, blurring the line between the laboratory and the cathedral. This was not mere showmanship, it was a reflection of his genuine, holistic worldview. He could not compartmentalize the scientific from the spiritual, the practical from the philosophical. To him, the rotating magnetic field was as beautiful and sacred as a symphony or a prayer. In the final years of his life, as he fed his pigeons and held his solitary press conferences, he became a living anachronism, a ghost from the Gilded Age haunting the Art Deco corridors of the New Yorker Hotel. Yet, even in this diminished state, his mind remained a formidable instrument. He wrote lengthy, intricate memoranda to the government, outlining his visions for defense. He gave interviews where he spoke of communicating with other worlds and of energy beams that could vaporize armies. The press, which had once revered him, now often portrayed him as a charming eccentric, a wizard who had outlived his magic. But buried beneath the sensational headlines was the undimmed spark of his core vision, a world united not by politics, but by technology, a humanity elevated by its mastery of the fundamental forces of the universe. His death, lonely and impoverished, was the final, stark embodiment of his tragic arc. The man who had illuminated the world died in a room where the light of his own relevance had nearly been extinguished. But as with a Tesla coil, the end of one arc initiates a new, more powerful one. The seizure of his papers, while an act of state security, inadvertently became the act of preservation that guaranteed his intellectual legacy would not be lost. The subsequent decades have been a long, slow process of decoding the hieroglyphs of his mind, of finding the signal in the noise of his vast and chaotic archives. Today, we live in a world that is simultaneously a fulfillment and a betrayal of Tesla's dream. We have the interconnected globe he envisioned, a world of instant communication and vast energy networks. But we also have the corporate control, the geopolitical strife over resources, and the weaponized technology he feared. The challenge he leaves us is not simply to build the next gadget, but to build the wisdom to use our technological power wisely. He forces us to ask, do our technologies serve humanity, or does humanity serve the technologies? Are we building a Wardenclyffe for the common good, or are we, like Morgan, only investing in systems that perpetuate our own power? The story of Nikola Tesla is the story of the 20th and 21st centuries in microcosm, a breathtaking ascent of technological power coupled with a profound struggle over its governance and its soul. He is our mirror. In his brilliance, we see our own potential. In his failures, we see our own shortcomings. In his unyielding idealism, we see a path not yet taken. The current he started does not merely power our devices, it charges our imagination, challenging us to dream bigger, to think holistically, and to never accept that the present limits are the final boundaries of the possible. The great experiment of Nikola Tesla, the experiment to see if humanity can wield the power of the gods with the wisdom of sages, is an experiment that continues, and we are all now its conductors. And so, we are left standing in the humming silence of a world he built. The story of Nikola Tesla does not end in a laboratory or a history book, it resonates in the very fabric of our modern existence. Look around you. The light by which you read, the device in your hand connecting you to a global mind, the invisible grid that powers your life, all of this pulses with the legacy of that one man's vision. He was the architect of our electrified reality, the prophet who saw a wired planet long before the wires were strung. But his true bequest is far more profound than the alternating current that courses through our walls. Tesla leaves us a story etched in lightning, a story of sublime genius and profound tragedy, of a mind that could conceive of illuminating the entire globe, yet often walked in the deep shadows of isolation and misunderstanding. He was the ultimate dreamer, a man who spoke to the future in a language of vibrations and energy, and whose greatest, most world-altering dreams of wireless power and universal connection remain, even now, just beyond our grasp. He challenges us, still. In an age of breathtaking technological advancement, his life forces us to confront the most critical question of all, to what end? Do our inventions unite us or divide us? Do they empower the many or enrich the few? Tesla dreamed of a world elevated by technology, a humanity freed from drudgery and connected by invisible bonds of energy and information. We have the technology. We have the connection. The final, unfulfilled part of his dream is the wisdom, the collective will, to use this power not merely for profit or pleasure, but for the profound and universal betterment of humankind. The current never died. It was merely transformed. It flows from his brilliant, tormented mind, through the power lines and the airwaves, into the challenges and opportunities of our own time. The great experiment of Nikola Tesla continues. And the ultimate result, the final judgment on his vision, rests not with him, but with us. We are now the keepers of the current. The future he imagined is waiting.